13, and we're about to graduate we have 4 girls and 3 boys. We're about to graduate our last one from high school in May. So we are going to be empty nesters after 30-something years of parenting. Everybody's asking us, oh, are you going to be sad? We're like, no, not really. It's been a long time. So we are Crazy Cool Family. We'd like to thank you. You want to get started, or you want me to first?
So let me get started. So as I was up in the little green room up there, which actually is not green, but I understand why they call it that, I was praying for you guys. And I felt like the Lord gave me a picture, a vision, and it was of all different kinds of land, like rocky soil and frozen soil and hard to get to soil and maybe even fertile soil. And I felt like there was a whole bunch of seeds that are planted there, and there's these little plants that are trying so hard to pop out. They're trying so hard to get their little heads out of whatever soil that is. And you guys are the water that's going through, and you're the refreshing water, the holy water, the inspirational water. And I just saw the watering can that was you, and you're just sprinkling it on all those different kinds of soils. And that little sprout, that little person, the sheep that you're ministering to, pops its head out successfully, and it's ready to grow, and it's ready to start changing the world because you have been faithful. Because you've said yes to the call that God has given you. Because you have chosen to give the seconds and the minutes and the hours and the days and the years of your life to invest in those seeds that people have planted. Maybe they're seeds that you've even planted, but you've chosen to spend your time pouring God's life, light, love, living water on them. And we just want to thank you.
Yes, because we are, usually we talk to parents. We just got back from a parenting conference in our neck of the woods. We just went to Louisiana the week before, and there we'll have a room full of parents, and we will talk to them. But every once in a while, we get the chance to speak to ministers like you. And so as we start this talk, we are the blessing of your work. Because years ago, in 1992, when we got married, we helped start a local church in Flower Mound, Texas. And 30-something years later, we're still there. They can't get rid of us. And we're that, if you ask the church, if you ask the family, we would be oh yeah, we know the Mannings. Oh yeah, they've got 7 kids. Oh yeah, we went on a mission trip with this kid, or this kid serves with me in children's ministry or whatever. But you know what we say is that church changed our life. That church, I was 27, she was 23. We were young. We didn't know what to do. We thought we were smart enough though to say, you know what, we probably need to go to church. That'd be a good thing, right? It'd be a good thing, Suzanne. We should probably go to church. That was about all we knew. And and God led us to help start this local church. We met in a movie theater. The first meeting of our church, and 33 years later or whatever, it's multi-site and it's a big church, but really the church blessed us. And really you're a part of that blessing because you are on the front lines, you're doing things, and just like Suzanne's vision for you is, we just want to thank you and we feel honored to be here. We feel honored, and we hope today that we will give you hope for your family, because parenting's hard, right? Everybody agree with that? Marriage harder sometimes, a lot. So it's hard, but we want to give you hope for your family, for your marriage, and also for the families and marriages that you represent in your churches.
Yeah. So you can head to the next slide. All that. Y'all feel gushed over enough? You feel thanked enough? Because we could literally spend the next 20 minutes just thanking you for what you've done. So just feel thanked, okay? Just breathe it in. Thank you. Okay, so we are Crazy Cool Family. We're a ministry that inspires and equips parents to build their best family. And so we hope that as we share with you today, that not only will this speak to you as a parent, but also as a pastor, as a minister. This applies to anybody and everybody that you interact with, including your spouse.
Yep. And so we just have basically, again, back to the local church. This ministry was birthed out of our church. When you have 7 kids and they turn out decent, people start asking you, hey, what are you guys doing? What's happening? I've met your kid or whatever. And so we decided that our mission in the last part of our lives would be to give the gift of family back to as many people as we could. Because isn't family a gift? And especially, when it's done well. If family goes well, it's a gift. And when we started having a bunch of kids, I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to figure this out, or it's going to be a disaster. And so we did some things. We prayed, we talked, we studied, and out of that came a ministry that started in our church, and it led to where we are today.
Yeah,
so that next slide comes up.
Next slide. And so this is kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, obviously, it's a whole big ministry. We've got a video course and books and blah, 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 all the things. But we're going to give you the crash course because you're really smart. And so this is Crazy Cool Family. We have 3 commitments. We start with God, which you guys get that. And then we talk about building relationships and creating culture. And so our pillars on the bottom of our house is the 4 crazy cool pillars. That's what we build everything on. That's what we build our culture on. Encourage, safe, we call it safe haven, disciple, discipline, and unity. And so we said create culture because that's what we get to do. We get to be like the creator. In the very beginning when God said, let there be, that's what we get to do in our families and in our homes. We get to say, let there be, peace, let there be joy, let there be fun, let there be laughter. We get to build that. And so we talk about that at Crazy Cool Family. But in the middle, that is our 5 crazy cool family relationships. And this was a picture that God gave Don somewhere along the way that he jotted down on a beverage napkin at a cafe with some
Not
friends.
at a bar.
And this is revolutionary when it comes to your relationships. We all know that the world revolves around relationships. Scripture says that love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. For me, though, I didn't realize that neighbor actually meant the man him right there, that guy, the person I was sleeping with, or all the little people down the hallway, that those were my first neighbor, and that I needed to practice loving them before I could even go out and love the grocery store lady and my actual next door neighbor. And so if you'll go to the next slide, this is what we call our family dashboard, and these are our 5 different relationships. And so the first one is the parent to God. We've got to have that, we are first sons and daughters of the King. We've got to get our foundation, our grounding from our relationship with God first. That's the most important. And then that marriage line. There's so many times that we've had children dropped off when we were working in the nursery, dropped off, and the kid was a wreck, and we were like, oh, I bet those parents fought on the way to church. And so y'all probably don't do that because you go to church way before your wives get there, right? And your wives have to bring all the children. So your fight's when you get home from church, right? And so then the unique thing is the parent to kid. And so for us, we had 7 children: Mollie, Madeline, Macy, McKenzie, Michael, Maddox, McCade. Yes, we named them all the same letter. Don't do that if you're at the beginning of your family. Just don't. So we have all of your kids, and every parent has their own unique relationship with their kids. And then what we get to do when we talk to a room full of parents is the most important. Let me back up a little bit. And then you've got your siblings relationships, your kid-to-kid relationship, and we have a huge ministry on that. We say children or siblings can and should be best friends. And so we just encourage you to do that. And a lot of parents are like, well, my kids are not. Would anybody say that maybe they're not? That's not happening right now? So we have a whole, teaching on that. But what I was going to say is the most important thing that we get to do as parents is we get to disciple our children. We get to connect them to God. And what's super cool about this room full of people is not only are you doing that with your children, but you're doing that with a whole building full of people. You get to use your relationship. You're getting paid to use your relationship to connect people to God.
Because here's what we found out, that if you would have asked me when I was a 5-year parent, I'm a 34-year parent now. We're starting our 4th decade of parenting. And another thing, we do our parenting in decades because that's how long it takes us to change, right? And it takes us to learn. But, if you would have asked me early in that what was the secret to parenting, I would have never have said this. But what we found over time was, and it's God's word was really where it was revealed, but that parenting is about relationships and culture. It's about connection. It's about, and when those things happen right, and really what we try to do with our Crazy Cool Family House and that family dashboard is give you, everything we teach comes through there, because if you'll build, so much of the world and so much of even our church parenting is focused on what's happening outside of us. It's focused on what's happening with technology, with schools, with government, with everything that's happening on the outside. But what we kept finding was when we built it right on the inside, we could handle anything on the outside. We could, if we equipped our kids on the inside, then they were, not that we didn't look to the outside influences and everything else, but it was a matter of focus, okay? It's a matter of where you focus. That so many, even Christian parents, are so focused on the external. Therefore, we want to control the outcomes, and we helicopter parent, and we do all these things. But what if we just sold them Jesus? What if we just connected with them? And so today, so that's everything, but today we want to give you an example of that and give you a way for you. I know you minister to your people. We want to minister to you today. We want to minister to your family. We want to minister to your marriage, to your relationship with your children. And let me go to the next slide. Let me ask you this. What if in your family and in your church, in your family in particular, that your children were inspired to live out their God-given destiny? What if they went to God because they wanted to? And what if every parent in your church, what if you could teach them how to be an inspired? Would you rather be, go to the next slide, would you rather be a parent, an inspiring parent, or a parent full of expectations? Let me let that sink in for a minute, and let's go to the next slide, because it shows something really important, that inspiration creates hope. Expectation creates disapproval. Now, hear me, parents. We do expectations with good intentions. You're not a bad person. You're not a bad parent. And really all we want to do, and in so many ways, you remember that there was this song that said we want to get rid of religion. We want to get rid of tradition, okay? If we're going to parent in today's world, and how do we parent? Paul said, I want to be, if I want to be like my people, I want to be like the people I'm ministering to. Well, how do we parent in today's society? Wouldn't you rather be an inspiring parent or a parent full of expectations? The inspiring parent says, I believe in you and I want to help. And that parent with expectations says, no, you should have done this, and you didn't. See the difference?
Okay, so God does it best. He's given us our best example. Go to the next slide. As we can expect, right? I mean, as we can assume. And so God, I just love the scripture. It's in several of the different gospels. But as soon as Jesus was baptized, he came up out of the water. The moment heaven was opened up and he saw the Spirit descending like a dove and lighting him. And a voice from heaven. I just wish that I could have been there and heard with a voice from heaven. I mean, it says, this is my son whom I'm loved. With him I am well pleased. When we do that with our children, when we say, this is my child, you are my daughter, you are my son, with you I am well pleased. When we go to our next slide. You want me to do that one?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Keep going.
And
You're
so
on a roll. Come on.
When we say that, what we're doing, what our children need from us, what the people in our lives need from us, is they need to know when we identify them, this is my son, you are my daughter, that we claim you. You belong to me, you're mine. No one else's, you're mine, because we all want to belong. We have that longing in our heart. I want to belong to somebody. I want to be claimed. And then we love you. We cannot say I love you enough. If we say I love you 100 times in a day to a child, they will believe it. But if we say it 1 or 2 times, they don't know if they can believe it or not. And so we've got to up our game when it comes to saying, I love you. I love him. From heaven, God said down to Jesus, whom I love. And then we are pleased with you. Who doesn't want to know that? Who doesn't want to be told that every single day? If we walked around all day long and just told people, I'm pleased with you. Don, I'm pleased with you.
Thank you.
I'm pleased with our marriage, you know? I'm pleased with you guys for being here today, for driving the 2 hours, the 4 hours, the however long it's 7 hours that it took to get here. We're pleased with you for investing in the people that you invest in your family. And so
Sometimes we ask parents, if we ask your child, if we said, hey, those 3 statements, what would your child say? How would your child respond to those 3 statements? Would your child believe that you claim him, that you love him or her, and that you're pleased with him? If you can do that as a parent, if you can get your child at any age will say, my parents claim me, they identify with me, they're proud of me, they love me, and they're pleased with me, you will create a child that will go change the world. Because what you're doing is you're giving them identity. So remember, you're the first God they see. You are the first God. When kids draw pictures, 3-year-old pictures, they draw them with legs this long and heads up here. Why? Because that's what they see. They see these big things up in front of them. You are their God. And so when we give them, and so wouldn't you like to be God was inspiring to Jesus. This is my son whom I love, and him I'm well pleased. Go get him, Jesus.
And he hadn't done anything yet,
Yeah.
right? I mean, y'all know it better than I
Yeah.
did. He hadn't started his ministry yet. This was right before it. And so there were no expectations on him. There was no disappointment in anything that he had done. He hadn't even started yet. And God went ahead and laid the foundation of
do the football analogy. Jesus, put your mouthpiece in. Go out and hit somebody, right? That's what God, do you want to be that kind of parent? Do you want to be a parent, or do you want to be the parent, and maybe you grew up with that said, wow, it doesn't matter whatever I do, I don't meet my parents' expectations. No matter how hard I try, it seems like it's never enough. Well, today, and again, we do that with great intentions. Why? We want our kid to be their best, right? We want them to love Jesus. We want them to make wise decisions. We want them to be happy. We want them to be smart in school. We want them to excel in whatever extracurricular they do. What if there's a better pathway that we could give you that could help you learn to be an inspiring parent, even an inspiring husband or wife? Would that appeal to you? Would that be something you want to do? That's what we want to do today.
All right, so next slide. So here's the pathway. You're like, okay, we're bought in. We got it. We'll do it. Yeah, tell us what to do. All right, so these are the 4 things to do: acceptance, connection, discipleship, inspiration.
And and most parents, when you look at that slide, are on number 3. We focus on correction, we focus on obedience, we focus on discipleship. What we haven't done is the first 2. And so let's go back. When we go to the next slide, it says, let's look at what acceptance is. Acceptance is to receive, approve, to believe in someone. Do you communicate to your kids that you believe in them? How do you do that? Well, I believe in you a lot. Just the same way with I love you. Go to the next slide. It's like there's so many, it's hard for us to give acceptance because we feel like we're always having to correct our kids. Again, what if we could make it where your correction goes goes further, that you correct less and it's more effective? How many parents would like that? How many parents would like it if you could correct less but it was more effective? Well, guess what? It starts with acceptance.
Yeah, and so the next slide is just the super practical. These are just ways to accept. And so you've got understand, and it's got your child, but please fill in the blank. Your child, your congregation, your employees, and so to start off with, we understand. We understand, and we understand where they're coming from. We have empathy. We just choose to see things from their perspective.
Yeah, I had a real problem when I was a young parent. And Suzanne helped me more than Suzanne and God. I don't know which order. I didn't think, I was scared my kids weren't going to turn out good. And I had a lot of them. And I was really scared. And so therefore, because I was scared, my kids, and I had 4 girls at first, and I certainly didn't want them to turn out bad. I mean, that meant they might be sleeping around. They might be, that just terrified me. I mean, of the things that, because I knew what I was like when I was a boy. I didn't wander around any of those other boys or anything, right? And so what did I do? I corrected them. And when they did something wrong, I corrected them again. And when they did something wrong, I corrected them again. And I looked at them harshly so they would obey me, because when I did that, it worked, right? But what happened is they lacked acceptance. So coached them on their sports teams, and after the ball game, I made sure they knew everything they did wrong in the basketball game, right? Well, guess what? After a while, they didn't want to ride with me anymore. I wonder why.
They get in the car with me, and I'll go, "You played great." And they're like, "No, I didn't, Mom." And I'm like, "Well, in my mind, you did."
And so acceptance, let me tell you, does not mean that you coddle them. Don't coddle your kids. But acceptance means it's the way you interact with them. It's coming to them and uncomfortably sometimes just saying, "Hey, I believe the best about you. Hey, instead of telling you what to do, I want to understand you more. I want to understand your interest. I want to understand your desires." These are your 4-year-old has feelings, has hopes, has dreams. Just instead of telling them what to do all the time, what if we just understand them, believe the best about them, and accept them, and bring out the uniqueness that God has put in them?
Yeah, and so Jesus did it best with the disciples.
Yeah, so, it's so interesting. The Bible doesn't talk about family very much. But and I think it's because God is our Father. And he wants to show us by being a father how we should be a father. But also, I also noticed as I read through the Gospels that when you look at how Jesus interacted with his disciples, we get a great example of how to be a parent. Think about it. Jesus took 12, one of them messed up, I get that. He took 11 unschooled teenagers.
Well, we're glad that one messed up, right?
Yeah, and he turned them into world changers. He took 11 guys that had never done anything and turned them into confident, go-get-em people. How did he do that? Well, when you read the Gospels and you look how Jesus interacted with them, he never really got on to them. He would challenge them, but he would let them do things. He would accept them. He would bring them back and love them. I mean, think about what he said to Peter. "Hey, Peter, on this rock I'm going to build my church." Peter was an idiot at the time. So was it hard for Jesus to tell Peter that? No, because he believed it. He saw it in him, and he believed it, and he told it to him. And the more we tell our kids those things, the more they will rise up. This isn't about lowering our standards. It's about ways to help our kids rise up, and acceptance is a part of that.
All right, so you got acceptance. We're believing God's going to do a work in your life and stir that up in you in a supernatural way. Let's move on to the next one, which is connection.
And acceptance and connection go together. Look at the definition. To unite, to bond, to establish safe communication. Does your child feel completely safe with you? Is there more fear than safety? Will they tell you anything, or do they hide things from you because they're scared they're going to get in trouble? Doesn't mean they ever get in trouble, but it does mean there's a way to bring safety and communication into the relationship.
Yeah, and so ways to connect, the next slide, to pursue, to enjoy, to honor your child. I would say that one of the main reasons, other than they loving Jesus, that our children are so incredible and amazing is because we did everything we could to connect with them. And that looked like pursuing them, going to their events, whatever it was, whatever was important to them became important to us because that's how we connected with them. And then in just enjoying them. Okay, so does anybody have 2-year-olds right now? 2, 3-year-olds? they're kind of hard to enjoy, aren't they? I mean, there's moments that they're hysterical and they're so much fun, but they are like a mess on wheels, just destruction everywhere. You take them out in public and they embarrass you all the time because they don't have any manners because they're 2. And so it's really hard to enjoy them in that age. And then fast forward to teenagers. Does anybody have teenagers? That's a 2-year-old with freedoms. You need to know that. Okay, so understand that you're circling back around to 2-year-olds with your teenagers. So just embrace that. Embrace the enjoyment part of that. And this is where the Holy Spirit, your counselor, is so helpful. When you just cry out, God, help me enjoy my 2-year-old or my teenager, God will. He's faithful like that. He's going to open your eyes and let you see the very thing that's annoying you is a gift from God that's going to catapult them into their own lives.
And he'll also help you honor your child. So often, now that we do the ministry, we've been doing it probably 15, 20 years. And so we just, when we walk into a supermarket or whatever, we see things, or at church or whatever. And so often you'll see the mom or dad, and they are talking to a friend. And they're talking to the friend, and everything's just, pleasant, and how you doing, and they're investing their lives. And here comes their 7-year-old, and all of a sudden they turn into this awful person. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you in here? It's just like, or they, don't do that or whatever. It's like, what if we just honored our kids? What if we honored our 3-year-olds? What if we honored our teenagers and realized they're little people that are growing up? Suzanne's mom used to say, oh, come on, Suzanne, they're just little people. And they really are, because we think of them as objects. They need to obey us. They need to do what they're told. And they do. Don't get me wrong. They need to obey. But what if, because here's what happens. These 4 things, acceptance, connection, discipleship, and inspiration, you can actually put acceptance and connection together, because what you're doing with acceptance and connection is you're building a platform. You're building a platform in their hearts. And so, remember I told you, I promised you that I'd help your discipline go better. I want your discipline to be easier and more effective. Okay, I want your discipline to be easier and more effective. Well, when you build that acceptance connection in their hearts, when they feel safe with you, when they believe in you, think about this. When you were a kid and your parents got onto you, what did it make you do? Did it make you embrace them and say, oh, thank you, mother and father? Or did you I know what I did. I wanted them to, especially, and if they lectured, then what'd you do? Did you want to listen more? Did you become more attentive? No, if you're like me, I said, how do I not say anything? And so that my mom, especially my dad, would be quiet so I could go somewhere else, right? And so, and then eventually I would tune them out, because the words kept coming, and I have to create protection for myself, if you know the psychological part of it. And so after a while I had to say, no, I can't do that. Well, what if that changed? What if you've built a platform in your child's heart or in your spouse's heart that then when you speak into it, they're like, I want to listen to that. So that's what leads us to discipleship.
Yeah, so next slide. So acceptance, connection leads us to, once you get those things down and you're really good at those 2 things. And so I just wanted to let you know that, God gave us a newborn baby. You're not discipling that newborn baby. You're not disciplining that newborn baby. You're accepting that newborn baby. Oh, my goodness. And you're connecting with every minute of your day, right? Nursing moms, right? There's so much connection, so much acceptance. God gives us pretty much a full year before that sinful nature really shows up in that 1-year-old. And that's when we can start using, the discipline comes out. And so it's no small thing that God gives us a whole year to really get solidified in our acceptance and connection so that we can discipleship from a good, healthy place.
So the next slide just talks about how to, your example is more important than your instruction. That's one of the biggest parenting lessons I ever learned, that I don't have to teach him as much if I use an example, and we do it along the way. But as a teacher, we're called to be teachers. We are called to instruct. We are called to, so parents, please don't let your kids be brats. This is not what we're saying. We're not saying let your kids be brat. We're talking about prepare their hearts so that when you speak into them, they will listen. And there are ways to discipline that will work better than others, especially if you have that built up. Example, my oldest son played baseball, right? And so great baseball team, 11 and 12 years old. I'm assistant coach on the team. He wants to get more playing time because he's not playing. He doesn't play on the later innings sometimes. And he says, and what I wanted to tell him was, if you'd work harder, you would get more playing time, right? If you would just work hard at the game, you would get, because you're not doing all you need to do. But that's going to tear him down. And so but remember, he's on a great team. I said, Michael, you're one of the top baseball players in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're on one of the top teams. Do you believe that? Yes, I do. Okay. Now, what do you think you need to do? Again, understanding him, modeling, teacher. What do you think you need to do in order to get better? Well, I need to take more ground balls because I'm missing a lot of ground balls at third base. Great. That's an awesome idea. I think that's amazing. Now, I'm willing to help you hit ground balls. But you see, now we've prepared his heart. He believes in himself, and he's actually talked about what to do. And then we can move forward with it. There are ways when you build their heart and then you learn how to discipline well, you're going to reach their hearts. It's going to be so much more effective. So, and then finally, just celebrating God's goodness with your children. So often we think discipline is telling them what they're doing wrong. But what if we tell them what they're doing right and we bring God's goodness into their life? We think of discipline as telling them what they're doing wrong, but actually discipline is finding things they're doing right and praising those things and influencing that behavior by calling them out to it. Which is, you want to finish anything with that?
No, I was just going to take us to inspiration.
Yeah, which takes us to the next one, which finally is inspiration.
So I love the word inspiration. That's to inspire. That's God's breath. And think about that. That's what we're doing. We're breathing God into the people that we're talking to, whether it be our children, our spouse, our people. And that's what we get to do. Encourage someone to believe in themselves, to do something bigger and beyond what they're called to do or what they think that they even can do.
Because think about it like this. Again, it goes in order. You've prepared their heart. They know that you love them, you believe in them, you accept them for who they are, you celebrate the uniqueness in them, you connect with them, you listen to them, you understand them. Then you can disciple them. Now they're ready to hear, they're more ready to hear your instruction for them. So you start to build into them, hey, let's do the right thing because you want to, not because I'm telling you to. Now you're ready to inspire them. You're ready to launch them into the kingdom.
And so one of the things I say all the time, see if you can follow this, I say, call forth what is not as if it is. Does that make sense? So call forth what is not as if it is. And so your kids are fighting in the back seat. And so from the front seat while I'm driving, I say, I love it when you guys get along. It just makes me so happy. It makes my heart happy when you share and you talk kindly to each other. I'm calling forth what is not. And the children are like, Mom, we're fighting. We're not getting along. And I'm like, I know, but someday you will. Maybe in a minute you will. Maybe you'll start. And so I'm calling forth what's not happening yet as if it will happen. Because God did that, right, in the beginning, and then the world was created. And so we can do that too. He gave us that power. He gave us creator status. And so we can inspire, we can create with our very words, just like God did.
And we realize we're giving you a lot. We're giving you a whole teaching on acceptance, connection, discipleship, inspiration. It's a lot. But as you start to adopt that attitude, as you start to adopt, I need to accept. I need to connect. How can I disciple well? It changes the way you parent. It makes you a more effective parent. That's our goal. But it takes a while. So, for example, again, let's do a sports example. So I would coach all my kids actually in basketball. And so what I learned over time is My son, again, that same son was playing basketball, and I would tell him in 5th grade or so, I would say, he would not be being as aggressive as I would like. He would not be, he was one of the better players on the team, but he wouldn't take the ball to the basket. And so what would our normal action do? It would be, son, get over here. Why aren't you doing this? Good grief. You're better than this, or whatever we talk to him. You know what I learned to do? I'd call him over and I'd say, Michael, that guy guarding you can't hold you. Take the ball to the basket. Okay? So instead of telling him who he's not, I'm going to tell him who he is. Okay? And then when I tell him who he is, and you should watch him. He actually, we had a meeting, we met we were talking about a year ago, and he goes, Dad, I remember when you did that. He said, I remember when you did that to me. And he said, I don't know if you believed it.
Or if it was true.
And I don't know if it was true. But he said, when I walked out on that floor, I saw myself differently. That's inspiration. And it builds. You can't go to inspiration until you get to acceptance. It takes time to build the heart, to build the trust in the heart. And I'll tell you, it even worked in our marriage. There was a time several years ago, we were getting to the end of 7 kids, and we realized that there was a lot of trust issues. And not trust like infidelity, but I mean like trust in terms of, trusting each other to be vulnerable. You know what? We've had to work on that. We've had to work on acceptance. We had to start back at the beginning. And we had to start back with accepting one another. We had to connect. We had to learn each other's language. We had to understand each other. Now we can do better to inspire each other.
Yeah, so go to the how. So we've talked about it a bunch, but go to the next slide. How do we do that? Just help our kids see the bigger picture. Kids are so wired to live in the present, and it's a beautiful thing and it's a gift. But if we can inspire them to see bigger, and then along with that, let them dream. And so I have a story. I have a friend of mine whose little girl wanted to be a mermaid, and your average person would be like, you can't be a mermaid. You don't have what it takes. You don't have a fin. You don't have whatever. But the parents were bigger than that. They saw the bigger picture. They saw, let them dream. And so they said, okay, if you want to be a mermaid, then you need to learn how to swim. And so they got her in swim lessons until she worked really hard and was on the swim team and won awards. And then they said, and if you're going to be a mermaid, you need to learn to sing because all mermaids sing. And so they had her in voice lessons to the point to where she could lead worship when she was a teenager. And so obviously she never became a mermaid, but they invested in the bigger picture, and they saw her dream, and they gave her the tools that she needed. And so that's what inspiration is. It's taking what our children dream in their tiny little dreams. Every little boy wants to be a football player because that's what our society says. And so we don't say, oh no, you can't be a football player. You're slow like your father. I mean,
hey.
We say, yeah, you can be a football player. What is it going to take to be a football player? And you inspire them to be who God's created them to be through their first little dreams.
Because let's face it, guys, the world's going to tear your kids down. You need to be their biggest cheerleader. And that's what I had to learn as a parent. I thought I was doing good by just telling them what they did wrong all the time. Why? So they get better, so they correct it or whatever. And there is a place for that, don't get me wrong. But there's also a place for acceptance. There's a place for connection. There's a place for understanding.
Go to that next slide.
There's a place for inspiration. And so I hope today that you've been inspired as a parent. I hope today that we're not telling you what you're doing wrong. We want to try to give you an adjustment to help you call out. We know you love your kids. We know that you love each other and you want the best for your marriage and your family. I want to give you, that's what I had to learn. It wasn't about working harder. It was about working differently according to the principles of God's word. And this is just a way that we can show you a pathway to get there.
Yeah, so that last slide, that almost last slide right there. And so just goes back to that, what God said to his kids, us, Jesus, that we claim you. This is my son. There's your acceptance. We love you, whom I love. That's your connection. We are pleased with you. With him I am well pleased. That's your discipleship. All that mixed together, that's the inspiration. That's what we're called to do. Inspire, breathe God's life into the people that God has put in our lives.
So thanks for your time today. If you go to the next slide, just really, it's what we tell people all the time is you don't become a great parent in days and weeks. You become a great parent in months and years. And it takes time, effort, and energy. And if we can become learners and we will apply ourselves and we're teachable, every family can win. We believe that. It may be dumb to believe it, I don't know, but I believe that every family can win. And we have hundreds, maybe over 1,000 kids represented in this room. I believe that every one of your children can love the Lord. I believe that every one of your children, that you can have great relationships with them. And so we try to drip that into you. This slide is about our materials. There's a QR code there that gives you a discount on the materials. But the next slide is probably the most important. That QR code, if you'll sign up for our email list, we want to connect with you. We want to help your family become amazing. And through this, this is how we communicate with you. This is also how we send inspiring material to you to encourage you, because, man, it takes time, effort, and energy to learn to be a dad, to learn to be a mom, to learn to be a husband, to learn to be a wife. So we would love for you to sign up for that email and connect with us.
Hey, it's Pastor Zach from the Illinois District Council of the Assemblies of God, aka Team Illinois. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you can keep up with all the videos from our events and stories from across the state. If you want to see more content from us, you can check out some videos right here. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.